I saved the wiper switch for last because it's probably going to be a little bit more convoluted than the other switches, and unfortunately, it will require soldering. Now, don't freak out. Don't start yelling and screaming and clicking off this video. I'm just going to show you what the basic deal is. You can buy cheaper soldering irons that will work. Basically, we need to solder our wires to these terminals. That's how these switches are designed. I know this looks monstrous, but just calm down. But it's basically meant to have wires shoved through the O. This wire, even this wire, this 14 gauge wire is too big. You need basically 20 gauge wire. Now, here we go. You need 20 gauge wire just shoved through here like that. And then you simply would solder your wire. Now, you might, listen carefully, might be able to just loop it back so long as you're using solid core wire, 20 gauge solid core wire. But it's going to be flopping around in the breeze, and it may or may not make contact. If you can somehow bend it around enough, then maybe you might be all right. But think terminals might touch, and this is why I saved it for last. I got this to work, and this will work. This specific switch will work. I'll explain how it works in a minute. But the way SES is set up, there's basically wipers go faster and wipers go slower function on there. There really isn't no intermediate circuit, low circuit, high-speed circuit. None of those exist as separate functions. So we have to cram going faster and slower all into one switch. And this is my solution. It does work. I will show you. It's a bit wonky, but it does work. You can see that ball right there. You see that move, that wafer, or that, I may call it a wafer washer or something with that ball in there. Those are your physical detents right there. That's what you're feeling when you're pushing the switch. So guess what? You can actually bend that down a little bit in order to make it feel a little bit smoother. Because when I first got the switch, these things are freaking hard to push over, cam over, if you will. So what you can get in here is you can get in your screw, get a very small, get your jeweled screwdriver in here, and just gently pry down on it. Don't pry down too much, because you're going to drop that ball bearing out of its slot possibly, and it's going to go on the floor. And well, I mean, you got screws here. You can actually take the switch apart and put them back in, but don't get too stupid with them. Just pull it back, just enough, just a little pry like that. That's all you need. Do that maybe in a few spots. Don't get crazy. Just bend those detents, bend that washer back a little bit so it's not putting as much pressure on those ball bearings. You probably can also see how that ball might be able to drop out. So you want to be careful. You can also probably put some grease in here, or probably not oil because that might dry up, but you can probably put some lithium grease in here or something to help smooth that action out as well. But now you can see it turns a little bit easier. It's still a little bit stiff, but you don't have to reef on it now. So if yours is a little too like a Twiga, now you can get in here and gently bend that detent washer plate down that holds the balls itself, and you might have a smoother operation. So little hack there for this cheap switch. When you switch it, you're going to go past the slower circuits, and then we'll have the higher, go faster circuits over here. So when we initially flip the switch, it'll be decrease, decrease, decrease. So in reality, that's just going to be wipers off. And then it's going to be low or intermediate, low, and high speeds. And then when we swap it back, it'll jump to the decrease, 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 back to the real position, and then it'll shut off. So if you want to go from high to low, you have to sweep back and then go forward a little bit. Almost kind of like a rotary switch, which I'll show you. But that's how I was able to get a simple twist switch to work. Not the most ideal, but it will work. So you got an extra knob you can play around with. Say what? So this is what you call a 2-deck switch. You've got deck 1 and deck 2. Deck 1 does not share anything at all with deck 2. They are completely isolated from each other, hence the porcelain white that you see right there. That's actually porcelain. That's not plastic. So we'll use deck 1 for decreasing our speed on our wipers, and we'll use deck 2 to increase the speed on our wipers, or vice versa. And I had been experimenting with this for so freaking long. Here's a 4-decker. We're not using this 4-decker, but you can get really stupid with your switchgear if you really want to make some crazy complex logic. But yeah, that I have been trying to test this out over and over and over again, and it's giving me a raw headache. This is like a 10, 11, or 12 pole position. So basically, you've got one input. You can see these two terminals here are just a little bit different looking than here. That's your input terminal for deck 1, and that's your input terminal for deck 2. Your input is in here, your input circuit is here, then output will be this terminal, or just this terminal, or just this terminal, or just this terminal. And how that functions, I'll show you guys how to wire this up properly. For those who know how to solder, I'll wire it up properly. You see that wiper? Your input is connected to that wiper, and that wiper will select the individual terminals, like that. So it's selecting this one, then it's selecting this one, then it's selecting this one, and now it's selected to this one. And you just rinse and repeat on another deck, and you got a whole nother circuit. So we can use this for decrease, and we can use this circuit for increasing. So obviously it's a lot simpler to have like an up and down arrow key switch that you can just simply go push up and push down. But that's not how real trucks works. At least, you know, most of the trucks have a rotary knob either on the stock or on the dash. If you're driving an older truck like I'm basically started my career off with, we have rotary switches. This is basically the same way of basically pushing an arrow down on the button or pushing the arrow up. You're just making contact between different points is all we're really doing. This allows us to create that into a rotary form so it feels more natural like we have in real cars. When we have it wired up, deck 1 will be our decrease, if I can keep that, if I remember that. So this will be decrease. What we have to do is we have to jump over these terminals. We have to use every other terminal. We can't use the same terminal right next to each other to go decrease the speed, because that wiper is too fat. You can't turn it really slow enough to have these trigger twice. It's too close that this pretty much triggers the next. It sits too close to here. So in order to register it via the relay board, we have to just skip terminals is how we're going to do it. So how we'll do it, this will be our decrease deck. This will be going to the decrease button function. This will be going to the decrease function. And this will be going to the decrease function. So when we first start our sweep on our switch, it's all going to be hitting the decrease circuit, which obviously the wipers will be off. So hitting the decrease button is not going to do anything. Then what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to here on the deck 2 and go increase circuit. We'll wire up another wire for increase circuit. So for the first increase circuit is incremental. The next increase circuit will be low speed. And the last terminal will be fast speed. And then when you bring the switch back to full off, it's going to be hitting your full increase speed and full increase speed circuit. So your wipers are still going to be going Mach 3 if you got them wired up for that fast. But once you pull it back, it'll start hitting your decrease pins on the lower deck. So it'll be decrease, decrease, and then decrease again, and that'll shut the whole system off. So if you want to jump from high speed to low speed, you can't just pull the switch back the way I have it. You have to swing it all the way back and then put it forward again. It's the best we can do because we don't have low, medium, and high speeds. SES does not give us that function, so we have to deal with what we can. So I will wire this up. I'm going to probably do a couple of soldering jobs for you guys right quick because I will need to solder this because I don't trust this is going to work for the tutorial. That's a bit too loosey-goosey. It might work, but I don't trust this. It's too loose. So let me break out the soldering iron right quick, and I'd show you guys how to solder, but I don't know how good of a teacher I am for that because I've been doing it for ever since, I don't know, 10 years old, and I'm 40 years old now-ish. But I'll show you anyway. So let me get set up here. And yes, we'll go through all the switches. I'll show you how it's all wired up, including our special terminal. don't freak out. Don't freak out. Just stay with me. And if you guys don't want to do this, just stick around anyways. Maybe you'll learn. Maybe you can glean something and learn something from me, and maybe get creative enough or get the courage enough to learn how to solder. If you're doing sim rig building, soldering is not a bad way to go if you want to mess with it. I'm gonna go get my irons now. A word of caution when you buy these very cheap deck switches. Mine didn't come with a knob. I only got this because I've bought a few of these to try to figure this out. Or in, say, the Canada land, figure it out. This knob did not come with it, so you can buy these separately, however. I'm using a 1/4-inch shaft, and they're fairly universal. It's a D style. You can kind of see the D right there, slot, if you will. Flat piece here. I'll link a knob down below, but they're fairly universal, so you may have to pick one of those up. And in order to do this, it will only go in one way. There's a little tiny set screw that comes up from the bottom, and that pushes up against the flat piece here. Anyways, you may have to buy your own. I was kind of disappointed. Selling a switch, you think, well, in this day and age, everybody's so cheap. But anyway, so you put in that set screw, and now it doesn't really move. And now we can torque this around. Now, this will feel like a really cheap switch, and it is. I'll link a more suitable one if you guys have the coin. They're about 30, 40 bucks, but you can get some more properly pull switches through DigiKey. But we'll use this cheap one because in this day and age, everything is so freaking expensive, and with the tariffs and taxes and you guys in the UK, VAT and all that junk, cheaper might be better in our case because we're not really pushing any voltage through here, so we can get away with a cheaper switch, usually. It might still fail, but sometimes with these cheaper switches, it might seem that, you got to push real hard to turn it. I'm exaggerating a bit, but sometimes these are pretty hard to turn if you get the bigger, bulkier switches like this. I ordered this switch. This one's much easier to turn, as you can see. It's this little brother. I was hoping that it would come with these populated, because these didn't have enough terminals on here. And when I went to select the slightly the bigger pull version, they gave me this big honking thing, so I was kind of disappointed. So if you have trouble turning this, you can actually get in here and wrench on it a little bit. The detents that you feel, is actually that disc right there with that ball bearing. That's literally all the detent is. That's what's actually happening here. All right, so I'm going to use the red wire as our input just for visual purposes. So there's our input. Remember, the input terminals look ever so slightly different than all the rest of the terminals. It's subtle, but they do look a little bit different. Also, don't use strand wire like I'm using. You want to use single core or solid wiring, because if you use multiple strand wiring like here, it's kind of hard to put it in the O. You know what I'm saying. I'm using my pencil soldering iron. This is my old school Radio Shack one, and it works just fine. They make multiple one of these. It's got a fine tip over here, so we can get it nice and intricate and nice and cozy with it. And do it and solder. For my soldering, I'm using rosin core solder. Use rosin core solder, please. What it is inside of this solder, believe it or not, this is not a solid soldering stick. And the very inside, it actually has a little bit of rosin on the inside. You can think of rosin, you can Google this later, but basically rosin acts like glue to help adhere and help bind your solder joint together. It can come in paste too. Some people may call it flux, but it's basically soldering glue to help everything stick together a little bit better. So basically, you get just a little bit of a dab on your tip. You get smoking. Got a little bit of smoke here. Don't breathe these fumes in, by the way, especially if you're using, they still make 60-40 lead solder, so don't breathe this stuff in. Do this in a well-ventilated place. We're going to heat our joint up for a little bit. Oh, maybe about 3 to 5 seconds. It should be hot enough that we can just put solder right on it, and it should pretty much self-solder it together, hopefully. If I can figure out a good... I'm going to touch the wire. It'll get nice and warm. And terminal got warm. And now I can see the solder pool out and spread about. I'm going to put a little bit more solder in there. This won't be the best joint, but it will suffice for our immediate purposes. There we go. So now it's all liquefied and it sucked itself into the wire. Now we're good to go. That is one. I'll do it a couple more times. But now we have a wire that is soldered. It's really not that complicated. And this might be a good way to start practicing soldering because you're really not doing too much damage. You don't want to have heat on it all the time because you might warp your selector swiper switch possibly. I mean, it's fairly cold to the touch. You shouldn't be doing much damage. This is a cheap switch. We're not putting any voltage into it. We're just using it to create contact points similar to pushing in a button, similar to hitting a button switch. That's all we're doing. We're just converted into a rotary motion is all we're doing. But it's a good skill to have. So hopefully this will encourage you guys to possibly tinker into soldering. So that's one input on the deck number 2. So that will go to our increase circuit. You can wire the decks up either which way. I don't care. As you can see, this has got strands in it. When you're dealing with wires this small, is my opinion, it's better to go with solid copper or solid wire. Like this, you can just stick it in there. With these tend to fray. You try to push it through these little terminal dealios. Sorry for the camera video. Sorry for the camera movement, but I'm zoomed in pretty substantially. Everything's gonna be a bit wonky, like me. So it's just status quo. We'll just bend this back. I'll do this one as well, and then I'll solder on a few solid core wires and show you how much better those behave. Find a good place on the tip there and just get a little pool of solder liquefied. And I'm just going to touch the terminal down below. It'll start heating stuff up. And then start throwing some solder on it. May have to put the pool up here a little bit more. There you go. Now the wire is heating up. You're using part of that pool to heat up the wire and the terminal. So now, if it's hot enough, you should be able to touch the terminal and touch the wire on the back side, and everything should start melting into place. And a little bit more. There we go. I'll touch the terminal itself for a second too. That's fine. Okay. Now we have 2 inputs. Our lower deck and our upper deck have inputs. So we have the part of the switch. This goes to your game controller board. And that'll go to the circuit of decreasing our speed. And then deck 2 here is also wired up for the input. That'll go to speed increase circuit. And we'll show you how I'll show you how I got it all wired up and got it all figured out. So now we need to make sure our switch is in the fully off position. So I'm gonna go all the way counterclockwise. So that's full off. Now we can work on our decrease or slow speed circuit for our wipers. And we'll use deck 1 to accomplish this. Start here. We won't start at the very beginning. This is the very beginning of the switch. If you ever get confused, just look on the back plane and you can see where the wiper switch, the actual wiper arm is. Right, where's it at? Right here. You actually see where you're physically at on the switch, in case you ever get lost in your sequencing. So anyways, we've got our 2 inputs. We're full counterclockwise, so that's fully off, if you will. Remember, these 2 decks are completely separate. Do not share any circuitry whatsoever. They're completely isolated. Think of the porcelains isolating themselves. They're 2 independent circuits. So basically, you can think about this is switch 1, and this is switch 2. So let's just focus on our first deck, which is the decrease circuit. I've marked it out with a marker, so we'll have decrease here, and decrease action here. We'll get those 3 soldered up first, and then as you continue to turn the knob, it's going to hit the increase circuit, increase speed circuit, and then increase speed circuit. Okay? Clear as mud. Perfect. This is a whopping 15-watt iron. It's very, very small. So you're not going to hurt yourselves too much, but that iron is hot, so just be careful. Dab a little bit on the tip, and then we'll scoot it underneath our wire / terminal. Whichever is more convenient, we'll just start heating it up. Maybe a little bit more on the tip there. Come on. Just don't really heat up very well. Come on. Put a little bit more on there. There it goes. There we go. Okay. All it takes is a second or two to cool and you should be able to move it around. Yep, that's solid. How you guys not doing? Talk to me, Goose. Talk to me. So I'm going to put a little bit of dab, get a nice little pool on my soldering gun, come up underneath and start heating it stuff up with that pool that we just put on there. It should hit things up nicely. You may have to add a little bit more to the pool once you're here. Things are going to start melting and oozing. That's when you know you did it, and boom, done. I talked to some people in my one of the discords I'm on, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't know about soldering." It's like, well, I kind of feel bad because I feel like it's pretty easy, but considering what I say, it's 10 years old probably when I started monkeying around with this stuff. I'm 40 now, so I guess I got 30 years of experience, which some of my, I will admit, some of my soldering jobbies, it does not look like it. AKA, it looks worse. But anyways, we'll just hook it here. No diggity, don't copyright me. I don't have my pliers, so I'm just using my surgical tweezers to bend that hook shut. Come up underneath the wire and or terminal, where you can get nice and cozy up to, and start heating it up and put a little bit more in here. And eventually you should be able to just touch the terminal with just the solder. When things are nice and warm, and things should just get sucked right into place. Not bad, not bad, not bad. Okay, that's good. That's enough heat. Don't hold that heat in there for too long. You might warp something. You probably won't with this ugly Betty of a switch. This is pretty a beefy switch, but... Alright. Excluding this wire back here. Just ignore that bit. I'll just crumple that up. So now we have our decrease switch. And this will be our input. So this will go to the ground plane on our game controller board. And these three wires are going to go to one single button. That's how it has to be set up that I've found. It just won't work any other way. It might work other ways, but this is a simplest way without creating Arduino boards and doing programming. This will go to one button for the decrease circuit, and we'll just use that by these Pepe electrical connectors. I'll show you that all along. So basically we have our first deck wired up, so ground comes on this side on our ground plane on our game controller board. This goes to ground, and this goes to whatever switch we designate as the decrease. So it's when you hit the switch, it'll decrease here, and then it'll decrease here when we turn the switch, and then it'll decrease here when we hit the switch, and it'll just hit that same button 34, button whatever we designate on the inside pin. That's where this goes, so it'll just keep hitting the same button. It'll go button 34, rotate the knob a couple times, button 34, rotate the knobs, button 34. Again, you're just pinging it, just like pushing down on a momentary switch. We're just, instead of a toggle, a rocker switch, we're doing it on a rotary. So, that would be the first deck that has been wired. And now, that's the full decrease circuit. Now we want to go on to deck 2 and hit the solder up the increase circuit wires here, here, and here. And hopefully this works. I've tested this in theory. It should work, but I've never actually wired it up, so this is kind of fun. So let me wire this whole Hot Mess Express up, and we'll catch you on the flip side, yo. Peace.
20 minutes later.
All right, the lower deck has been wired as well. So there's our input. This would be to the switch. Same switch command, same switch command. So decrease speed, decrease speed, decrease speed, which obviously that's going to net us in 0. And then as we continue to flip the switch over, that wiper will start to hit these contacts over here. In that case, right now it's resting on this wire. So now this will go to the other button, and it'll hit this switch, completing this circuit. So that's a button press. Click, click, button press with these wires. And then all the way over for your fast speed will be these two wires, which will go to the same switch. It's just increase, increase, increase speed. And then when we pull it back, we'll have increase speed, increase speed, but then we'll have decrease speed on the first deck, decrease speed, decrease speed. So if we're going fast, and then it'll go to slow, intermediate, and then off. I hope this is not too confusing. This is why I saved the switch for last, because it might be the most convoluted. But you can actually see, what you're seeing is your actual circuits for your increase and decrease commands. Literally right before your very eyes. This is it. This is register as a button press. Turn the switch over. This will go as a button switch. And then this will go as a button switch. And these are just going to be all tied in together. So it's button, button, button. Same button, same button, same button. And you keep turning it over, and then you're going to go faster. This is the best way I found, but it genuinely works. It'll be a little bit wonky, because as you go slower, you have to get to the slow side of the circuitry of our rotary switch before it actually starts slowing down. So we'll go from fast to low. Then you gotta sweep all the way down here and then back up a little bit. Convoluted, perhaps, yes, but we'll see if this works. Okay, so to wire this up, this is our Go Faster deck, or deck 2. We're gonna hook up all of our buttons together. Technically, they're switches, not buttons, but you can consider them as buttons for this tutorial, just to help those of you who are slightly confused. I'll help you out a little bit. We'll use these Pepe's connectors here. Okay, so all those are connected. Now the ground, remember the red is our input wire. That will go to our ground over here. And then remember, this is our button press. Button, 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 or faster, faster, faster. That's going to just one button on our game controller board. So to reiterate, we're on deck 2, just deck 2. These are deck 1's wires. We're not worried about that right now. It's just going to be a rinse and repeat of what we're doing right here. For deck 2, our Go Faster circuit, we got our input here. We'll connect that to our ground plane of our game controller board. In this case, for the Leo board, it's the outside one for this particular board. As the ground plane's the outside. That's fine. So ground plane, which is on the outside, is our ground wire going into the input side of the red wire here, into our one terminal on here that looks different than everything else on here. Subtle, but it is different. So that's our ground wire. So when we hit the switch, this will get grounded, continuing to turn it, this will get grounded, continuing to turn it, this will get grounded. And all of those grounds go into one button action, which here looks like I put into button number 2 here with the purple wire. It's probably really hard to see. All right. And then it's literally the same thing for the other side. This will be our ground. We'll run it to another ground plane here on this side. These wires will get all bundled up together, and this will be our button action. And I'll go to another button. Button, button, button. So same button action, same button action, same button action. Just like pressing a rocker switch going push, 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 push. It's push, push, push. Same thing. We're all wired up and ready to go. Look at that convoluted mess. It actually doesn't look that bad. Once you figure out the theory on how I wired it up, it's actually not that terrible. Now, will it work? We're going to see here in a second. Again, this is just going to one button switch on here, because it's all daisy chained together on deck 1 here. the ground's coming from the Leo board, or your game controller board, the common ground wire. That'll be your input to the switch, if you will. Then when you start to rotate it, you're going to be grounding this wire, then grounding just this wire, then grounding just this wire, and they'll all register the same button press because we have them all connected up to each other, but we spaced them out enough, they'll act as an independent switch. So that'll be our decrease button, decrease button, decrease button, and this will be increase button, increase button, increase button here. All right, let's go ahead and wire it up and see how well this gets on. I'm a bit nervous myself. Fortunately, though, you don't have to run a relay board here, though. So it kind of simple-ish. I would suggest it when you buy a button box, get a big button box because you're going to have a lot of shenanigans going on. Right, I'm going to start the simulator. Stand by. Right, here we go. System, our favorite. Options, freaking keyboards and buttons. Wipers. Oh, my arch nemesis. I can't tell you how long it took for me just staring at these flipping switches to get that to work. So wipers. Okay, so we have wipers. This is our faster circuit wipers, and then wipers back is our slower button deal. So, oh, someone was monkeying around in here. What? Oh, no, I don't want. I want unassign it. I want unassign it. Unassign. Yes. Solved. Go away. Unassign here. And unassign here. Yes. Okay. So, with the switch all the way in the fully off position. Okay, that's fine. So, our first circuit should be our decrease circuit. So wipers back. So we're just going to, it should be a hold. And it does register as a hold. And then we're going to switch it again, and that should click it off there. Now we're going to rotate it all the way to the fast speed. And we're going to use that as wipers, this go faster wiper button, or turn the wipers on, if you will. Okay. And actually, we don't need the secondary switch, actually. So, I don't have the wiper switch on right now, I don't think, in my truck. So I'm making sure I turn the rotary knob all the way off. Okay. I'm going to hit drive. Oh, yeah, and I got to wait for it to load up. Oopsies! Pop-up vibration prevents poor performance. Oh, shoot. Well, that was pretty fast. Never went up. Oh, yes. Push on my... There we go. Oh, I do have my wipers on. Okay, whatever. Actually, I should be able just to hit the decrease button and turn it all the way off. Ooh, something happened. It turned off. So, let's see here. If I can show it to you here, we're going to go... It's going to be decrease, decrease for a bit. Eventually, we'll hit that high circuit. Okay, that is the intermediate circuit. And then we're going to twist it again. Clicked. And so that's our low circuit. And we've got a high circuit. Haha, it's going to work. Now, obviously, when we go back 2 or 3, it's going to stay in the high speed because it's still on the wiper mode. Now, when we pull it back further, we should hit our wiper back mode, which is our deck 1. And there's our slow speed. And that's intermittent speed. And one more click, 2 more clicks, should be off. Uh-oh. Did it not register the off? Oh, it did not. There it goes. Okay, so it's a little bit fiddly, but it does work. So let's try this again. So you got to turn it a little bit to cruising for bruising, rolling down the highway, listen to some Steppenwolf. Got your motor running, dun, 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 dun. Let's try to turn them all the way off again. I may not have wired up enough buttons for the off command. Yeah, it should register off. Unless the wire is not physically plugged in. No, it registered there. Okay, so it's probably just the same as your other switches I've told you about. Don't push them in and out too fast. Nice slow rotating speed. Give plenty of time for the controller to catch up to figure out what this egghead is doing. So let's do this much slower here. Here we go. Here we go. Ready? Nice and slow till something happens. All right, we got some action going on. So we need to turn on that. That's fine. And then crank it all the way up for fast, right? Now we're going to go slow. Start cycling it slowly. Yeah, works just fine. There you go, guys. That is how you wire up a wiper switch. Pretty cool, huh? You guys want to see that again? Let's do it one more time. This is so flipping cool. Right, there's intermediate, low, high, perfect. Boom. How do you like that? Isn't that awesome or what? That's fantastic. Now, let's say if you were in high speed. Oh, it registered. Oh, it didn't register my high speed. Yeah, you got to be pretty slow with the switch. That's why we're skipping every other terminal, wiring it on here, because this wiper's too close together. Yeah, you really have to go slow with this. So let's say we want to go from fast speed to low speed. We actually have to turn the knob back to go, and then go back forward. So let's go back on the high speed here. Okay, that's fast speed. Now we can't just go back to here because we're still on the high, go faster circuit, right? So we'll just pull it back slowly. There you go. You don't have to go back forwards again. You actually pull it back. It'll be a little bit different. It's not quite normal, what you'd have in a normal truck. But, yeah, see, even that was too fast. It did not register at that. It will be quite normal, but it is technically fully functional. Your rotary, your arm might get a little bit tired after a while. With all the twists and turns. I don't think it will, but that's fast. Okay, they're slow, intermediate, and off. There you go. Okay, so just remember, when you're using switches, just go nice and slow. Give it plenty of time for this signal to go all the way to the here and all the way shooting in the computer, which has to translate it into the simulator. Just go slow with it. But that's how you wire up your wiper switch. Hopefully it was pretty crystal clear to you guys, or you may have to watch it a few times. Basically, again, all we're doing is we're just creating a switch going from the game controller board, and instead of using a push button switch or a rocker momentary switch, we're just converting into a rotary form. We'll use deck 1 here to have that connect to these two wires, so decrease speed, and then when we get over far enough, it'll actually go into the increase speed on deck 2 for the wiper, both in the truck and the actual wiper switch in here. And then when we pull it back, we're pulling it back, we're still on the high circuit. Now we're on the low circuit button, and then off. It's probably about as clear as I can make it out to be. But, yeah, anyways, I hope that was clear enough. I'm still a little bit nervous, but I'm not sure. No, I think you guys can get it. If you play it back long enough, you'll be able to figure it out. So we're just using deck 1 as a 1-button push multiple times, hence the multiple yellow wires. And then deck 2, we're using it for the wipers faster mode, or wipers in general mode. And we're just using it as another button. So button, press. Only we're just using one button instead of 3 different buttons because we don't have that feature. Which would have been nice, but oh well. Sweet!